All right, guys, we're now live again. Another Wednesday night conversations with Cougars, and I am so pleased to have a former teammate and classmate of mine, and still looking like he could play right now, from Raleigh, North Carolina, Rick Cazenave. Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you. As long as I didn't have to run, that'd be great.
And guys, he's wearing a relic. This is an antique. Not that Rick's an antique, but this shirt on the open market, AKA eBay, would fetch at least $1.25 by some former Northview family. But no, I remember those shirts. I wish I still had mine, but that's a great shirt.
Yeah, I saw Willie with the jersey last week, and I know I have one somewhere, but I found this thing, and I'm amazed how yellow it still is.
Oh, well, I tell you what's even more amazing, guys, is the fact that Rick could fit in it. Look at him at the gun show. I know Rick still works out with his sons quite a bit, so that's awesome. So glad that you got some time for us to chat tonight, Rick. It's good to see you.
Okay.
Well, Rick, guys, for those of you who don't know or haven't heard me talk about this, our class, the class of '86, that was the season of '85, of course, our state championship team, and Rick's class, the class behind us, the '87 class, was collectively the guys from those two teams and the girls who were the cheerleaders. The amount of brain power in those two classes was so impressive. So many of the guys and the girls were on the honor court or National Honor Society or had 4.0s and went on to do awesome things. And I'd stack Rick up there with anybody in those classes. And just to brag on him a little bit, he always was quite cerebral in his approach to the game, and frankly playing, I don't know, how many positions did you end up playing? I know you settled at defensive end, but at least 4 different positions I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit much. When you're 170 pounds, maybe 175 after a biscuit, you have to play cerebrally.
That's right. And guys, we're going to get into all that good stuff in a few minutes. But Rick, I'm going to stop rambling on, but I want you to catch people up with where you are now. Where do you live? Tell us about your awesome family and what you do for a profession, those kind of things.
So we live in Raleigh. That's a relatively recent situation in the last year and a half or so. I run a business group for a global company with the global headquarters located in Cary, and we produce specialty coated materials that the easiest description would be like a Band-Aid, the white peel off for a Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. Quite possibly the least important thing that we do, but we protect things that stick together. So airplane wings and that kind of stuff. My wife and I have been married 23 years, Kathy. She is from New Jersey, which has made for an interesting
I was getting ready to ask.
She comes from the land of constant alcohol consumption, and so she's got to make up for my lack of drinking from time to time. And we have 2 sons. So Rick is 19. He'll be 20 in April. He's a sophomore at Auburn, some kind of engineering. And then Matthew is going to turn 18 in December, beginning of summer. He's a senior in high school here in Raleigh. So.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Rick is following at least in your footsteps at Auburn. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, let's jump on back. Guys, I remember Rick from, I guess, as early as maybe 9th and 10th grade. But Rick, remind us, what neighborhood did you move to and grow up in middle school before you got to Northview?
So I'm not from Dothan originally, right? So I grew up in Florida and had a brief, was a brief refugee in Macon, Georgia before coming to Dothan. So I'm halfway through my 7th grade year, moved from Pensacola to Macon. And then I spent the whole 8th grade year in Macon. Now, oddly enough, in Macon, high school started in the 8th grade. So I went to Central High School in Macon for that year, that full year that I was there. And Central High School was one of the 5 biggest schools in the entire country. And it wasn't the biggest school in Macon.
Wow.
4,000 students at Macon Central, and Southwest had like 4,300.
So such a small town. had no clue.
So, well, when you have eighth graders too, so I had played football, couldn't play varsity because they still have the same rules, ninth, 10th, your qualifying or your eligible years. But I played on a football team where I played quarterback. So the junior high / JV team. And the thing that stood out for me back then is that my offensive line was bigger than any offensive line that you ever played behind. My center was 260 pounds.
In 1984, 83.
Huge. We had 150 kids that dressed out for that team for every game, 150. And so we had these huge kids. We lived in Macon, and this is because my mom, right? Is that so we're going to Dothan, and they're getting a tour. I'm still whatever, and they get somebody to give my parents a tour of the weight room and everything. And at the end, they go, "Well, what do you coach?" And he goes, "I'm a senior, man." And my mom, I was clearing up baseball and Macon tournament. She goes, "Rick, they're just as big here as they are in Macon. This guy's a grown man. He's got mustache and stuff." And I was like, I didn't know who it was. It was Doug Jones.
Well, yeah, that was a man. That was definitely a man.
And so, it's funny. It was like the first exposure she got was to Doug Jones. And of course, Doug Jones was all world, everything linebacker. So yeah, that was her first exposure to Dothan. And so she just assumed that everyone's 6'3" and 225 pounds.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
Wow. So you moved to Dothan before your ninth grade school term?
Yep. And so I lived just off of 431, just inside the circle, not 431, 231, over there where the Ford dealership is.
Sure.
Just inside the circle, yeah. And so it's funny, the first person I ever met in Dothan was Cindy Veal.
Ended up being your classmate for 4 years.
Yeah, so just
interesting.
Just a straight, I think it was at Westgate Park or wherever it was. That's where I met her briefly, but that was the first person I met. But I didn't know a soul when I got to Northview.
Well, when you came to the school, obviously, if you were coming from Central, which sounds like it was a tremendous size campus or multiple buildings or campuses, Northview probably wasn't that big of a stretch for you compared to others who had never seen the campus before, because frankly, it's as big as a junior college.
Yeah. I mean, Central Macon was in one of the roughest parts of town that you can imagine. There was a big difference. The concept of morning break. Remember we used to have morning break? Yeah. We didn't have morning breaks at Central High School. We had barbed wire fences and a bunch of other things. So it was, even for me, Northview, because Northview was almost still a brand new school for all intents and purposes. So it was dramatically different. Central High School had been built in the 50s. And so different, the architecture and all that kind of stuff. But no, I wasn't intimidated by the number of people because there was less of them. So, yeah.
Well, Rick, when you came over, did you know, was baseball and football, you definitely wanted to play both sports coming over?
Sure. I mean, of course, baseball, it's funny about baseball is at different times, I still play baseball today, is that it was probably the one I should have spent more focus on, but at different times it wasn't important to me, but I was going to play football. Now I was also hoping I was going to be a little bigger than 170 pounds, but no, I figured that. I actually played basketball that freshman year too. So
play for Coach Cleveland or Coach Tribb?
Yeah, it was Coach Cleveland.
Yeah.
So
well, Rick, we've got a bunch of folks who stopped by. I want to give you some shout outs, guys. Of course, I'm talking with Rick Cazenave. Coach Jerry Andrews has stopped by. Cece has stopped by. Josh Parrish, Jason Mullins, Shaky Parker, Chris Parker, Coach David Ryan, and several of them said to tell you hello, Rick. So thank you guys for stopping by. Now, Rick, I know that academics have always been important to you, and transitioning from one big high school to another, what was if you can remember some of this, what were some of your initial recollections? What were some of the things that stood out from you, not from an athletic standpoint, But from an academic standpoint that you either liked or just had to deal with, didn't like.
You know, the one good thing about high school is that the schedule flexes, right? And so, I mean, as you recall, I took very few classes with my own class. So I was already in, you know, algebra 2 and geometry and, you know, chemistry and so a few other things. So I took a lot of classes, except for English. I took most of my classes with your class. And so, so it was a weird situation, kind of trying to determine who your peers were. But you know, that's the thing is you know, in high school, because you can tailor your schedule, you kind of get dropped in where it is you should be, right, in terms of difficulty and you know where you are from a learning standpoint. So, you know, listen, I don't think that there was anything but seamlessness for me. The only class that I, you know, was kind of odd to me was it wasn't chemistry. I took whatever they called it, science in ninth grade, and we had some sort of book issue.
Physical science, I think, is what they called it.
Yeah. So we had some sort of book issue, okay, and the book didn't show up until the first, you know, 6 weeks of school. And as soon as they handed me the book, I looked at it and go, "That's the exact same book I just used in 8th grade." So I did not help certain classmates in there keep their focus. That's for sure.
That's pretty funny. Well, it's transitioning from one city to another city, one school to another school. That's even more difficult to me than it would be just going from middle school into a high school, you know, in your same city, because you have all your peers or a lot of peers from your middle school come over, but you didn't know anybody.
No.
And how did you break the ice? Was it just through sports, or were you still trying to fit in to social circles academically, or what was that like for you?
Well, you know, sports helps, right? So, you know, back in those days, I don't know what they do these days, but all the freshmen come for a day before the school opens up, and then they have this thing when they go, "Anybody new to the school system?" And all 3 of us stand up, right? You know, it's like, who's that? I'd already had like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, with the football team. And so, you know, I already knew some Dewey and, you know, Bobby and, you know, different folks, Chris, and, you know, I keep telling like, "Listen, man, I got to call you Chris. I can't call you Shaq. I'm sorry." You know, Chris, there were certain folks that, you know, you were already connected to. So, you know, that helps a lot, right? It's the everybody else. Who's that guy? And then I didn't have any classes with any of them.
Right. You only saw them at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, you know, except for English. So, but it was fine. You know, some people are more inquisitive than others. You know, everybody, you know, you're like a unicorn, right? Because most everybody knew somebody from, you know, Beverly, or, you know, one of the middle schools, right? And this guy, nobody knows who this is. So, you know, some people went out of their way just to figure out who you are, and it was fine. You know,
you're probably, at least for a while until you found your friend groups, you probably felt like a fish out of water for a time here and there, depending on the school day and where you were. But from an athletic standpoint, did you also have the mindset, I probably shouldn't even be playing with these 9th graders. I should be up on top of the hill with the varsity and JV. Or did you really have the mindset, I think I'm where I need to be from an athletic standpoint?
So there's a funny, you know, so first, right, you know, I was there, I missed like the first 4 days because the baseball tournaments were ending in Georgia. And so I come in, and of course, they've already been told that I played quarterback. My quarterback in freshman year lasted 1 play in practice, okay? Coach Cleveland goes, "We're going to run the veer." And I'm like, "What?" Veer? That doesn't mean anything to me. We ran you know, you didn't run that. And so, look, you're going to put it in his belly as he comes here, and if that guy gets him, you're going to take it. And so I did that. I pulled it, and then I tried to run with it. And so I'm running with it, and he goes, "You're a fullback." And then somehow I ended up at defensive end first. So I don't, you know, how that all worked out. But I was, you know, what's interesting in the 9th grade year, I probably was 160 pounds, okay, 160, 65 pounds. I was already as tall as I am now. And so as a ninth grader, you look okay. But the story I would say about whether or not I should have been on the freshman team, to your point, because I've been playing at the high school, it all has to do with position. Okay. So I played defensive end freshman year, the whole season. And then the last 2 games, I also played on offense. So I was also running back the last 2 games. But it was the spring. Okay. There were 2 people that drove you into other positions in that spring. And one of them was LaRue Freeman. Okay. Me as a 160-pound defensive end trying to tackle LaRue Freeman, I became a quarterback again.
I remember that.
Yeah, and Steve Jackson was the other one. Remember Steve?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I think Steve was the one that I think that was Mike Henry. I think he was the one that just, you know, I think Mike got the better of him in this drill a couple times, and then they got on Steve, and then Steve you remember Steve? Steve was, he was a massive human being.
He was built.
So very strong. And he hit Mike. Mike became a safety after that.
That's right. That's right. Oh, and I want to welcome LaRue just joined us. Good to see you, Rue.
I love, just aside, because he's on here, it's like the defense and the offense watch films on Saturdays, after the game.
Yeah.
Our favorite pastime was watching LaRue and how people would try not to tackle him. I can't remember who we played the one time. The safety jumped 5 yards to the side to not get run over by him.
Rue, if you can remember which game that was, bud, throw us a comment. But
woo,
there was no better feeling for me as a quarterback knowing who I had directly behind me and where he was going.
He was tough to tackle, man.
He was. But Rick, I do remember you bouncing around to different positions. I remember you playing quarterback a little bit. But one of the things that I always admired and thought about you was I don't think they would have tried you at different positions if they didn't think you could either A, physically handle them, or B, more importantly, mentally be able to figure out the concepts. Because whether you're playing quarterback or fullback or defensive end, footwork and having your body in the right positions, it's not just a physical game by any means, especially for those positions. You've got to be able to mentally but here's my question for you. As a fullback, you're ramming forward and you're just hitting whatever comes in your way. But obviously when you're playing defensive end, you've got to use your hands, and you were so great at getting low and using your hands for leverage. Yeah. How did you switch that or turn on that switch in your head about figuring out the defensive end position and feet and all of those things?
Survival.
Nothing like fear. Nothing like
Chris.
fear.
I saw when Chris did his. It's like I never lined up against anyone that wasn't bigger than me. 2 years. Okay, so I played 2 years at defensive end, right? And not only that, it's funny because Chris and I weighed the same. It's just he had his on a 6 foot plus frame, and I'm on 5'8" frame, right? And so strong side. Why? Well, you're at least weight in a smaller package. We're going to put you against tight ends and stuff. It just, again, we talked about that cerebral finesse kind of thing. Look, I had a job, right? To keep contained, to not get pushed off the ball, to be in the right spot, and really to kind of help, as the linebackers would flow and that kind of thing. It's you're talking about the difference with like fullback. Well, you have to remember, even when I played fullback, it wasn't me blowing out, the end, right? It was, I could block him, but I'm still 170 pounds, right? It depends on who's standing up there. But, on sweeps and things like that, it was still very technical, right? And so when you only, I was reasonably strong for my size, right? Particularly lower body, but no, I mean, you have to be that way. And so I didn't play fullback any differently, really, in terms of technical than I did the defensive end. I wasn't pushing anybody over, right? It just wasn't happening.
Let me give you a case in point. Playing defensive end my senior year, your junior year, 2 games against Robert E. Lee, a future classmate of yours at Auburn, Anthony Brown, who's been on this program. Yeah, I'm sure you guys butted heads a bunch in those games.
Oh yeah.
At the time, Anthony's 6'5", 260 at least. was the guard next to him, probably not quite.
They were monsters. They were
I was going to
monsters.
say, those were huge guys. And if you didn't have those technical skills, you would have never survived.
No, so again, what's your job, right? Listen, I'm not going to push a 60-pound person out of the way. But what I can do is kind of hold my spot and allow Willie to flow over to find the opening, which is really, and then because I was always on the strong side, so I'd have Willie and I'd have Mike Henry, okay. And so, I sent you that note. Is the funny thing about that league game. So that was the first game. That was the 3 games in 10 days and hurricane game and all that. At the onset of the season, there was a discussion around, hey, listen, Rick, you'll swap out with Chris Lee at the end position. That never happened. I remember Chris, I went out the first one, I go, hey, you want to go in? He's like, anything to do with it.
Sounds like Chris.
And so I never came in 2 years. I played every defensive snap for 2 years. But the thing that I told you that stood out to me in that game was we're on a goal line. And they've got, the one kid's near 300 pounds and 260. And they're just, huge. And there's Ross and I. We've never played a varsity game for anybody. And we're on the strong side. And stopped them. And then for whatever reason, we had to flip sides. We stopped them. They still came same side. They flipped their line. We flipped and we stopped them again. And I've known Ross now at this point, it's 2 years plus, right? Ross is a mild-mannered guy most of the time. Ross gets up and goes, Junior's just whooping you, hold it. I mean, he's just talking smack to these guys against, and I just remember just laughing. It's like, man, you got some edge to you, Ross.
He found that emotion.
Woo!
He found it. And I want to welcome him. Ross just came on and heard your story, so that's great.
Ross was, man, there were times out there, Ross typically a low-key guy, man, but on the field, I remember quite a few times where he let somebody know when he was whooping on him. And that was a huge game. I think you had Ragsdale on, and we got stuck in that defense for 3 games, right? And so it was not our normal defense.
Yeah.
And so what's funny, you talked about going back and playing league again. I'm gonna pick on Coach Rags. I check on him every once. I know he's not on social media. I check on him every once in a while. I asked him some point like Tuesday. I go, hey, are we gonna do 6-man front again, or what's? No, we can do it with this. We ran goal line. We ran goal line defense the whole second half. Is that we just we just couldn't match up with those guys without the extra defensive linemen. So you had like Bobby would come in, or Joey Sheffield, or one of those guys, Manny. We had to get you had Lonnie. Lonnie was whipping people pretty good. I don't care how big they were. Lonnie was real quick.
He was very quick.
And he would cut through, but we had to have an extra lineman in there. It was just so tough.
Rick, he infuriated in a good way Mark Smith, Dewey, all of the guys in the middle in practice.
Oh, yeah.
They could not keep up with him. But what I will tell you is not a lot of teams passed against us. So it allowed you guys to stay in that defense. But here's my question for you.
Yeah.
Did you find it to be of any advantage to you being left-handed on the position you were playing? Did that help you at all?
Actually, not playing defense. I'm actually ambidextrous, so I actually don't. I throw left-handed, I write right-handed, so I kind of do a little bit of everything with everything. So, no, actually, the one time that left-handed helped me was back when we were in JV. You remember we had a game, and I don't know what helped, like your helmet exploded or you got hurt or something. I'd never taken a snap, and at Northview as a quarterback, and it's 4th down and 12 in a JV game. You got to take the play, and I'm like, all right. That was the only time being left-handed helped, because when I dropped back, because whatever happened to you was happening to me. It was like a jailbreak on the right side. And when I ran up to the left, all of a sudden you could see all the faces. They all stopped. Everybody just stopped, like, hey, he can still throw the ball, And I bounced off like 5 or 6 people and was like, hey, good season, and then I'm back to fullback and you came back out.
Rick, I don't remember the play, but I know my mother would not have allowed me to be hurt, so I'm sure it was an equipment issue.
Yeah, I think your helmet came apart.
That's right.
But so that was the one time being able to play left-handed helped. But no, I'm telling you, actually being short helped.
I guess from maybe a leverage
Oh,
standpoint.
God, yeah, you got to be. I mean, you remember the Enterprise game, right? It's like they clone people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The tight ends, like there's one of me, and it's like how many of you do you guys have?
They just keep coming.
6'2", 220, 6'2", 215. And then the really good kid was like 6'4", 215, right? And I'm just, there's one of me, 5'8", 170. And I'm just my only option there is to just kind of try to hold the spot. But no, actually it was in that environment, really, it was the ability to kind of stay low. The hand fighting, the issue with the hand thing, remember who the deep snapper was?
Was it you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember how that happened?
No, I don't. Maybe.
You know why? Because no one remembers. I don't even remember. I don't even know how that happened. It's, what it is so you were the punter, right? Most people remember that. It's like, I don't even know what happened. I know that there was something about, well, you just kind of throw it through your legs. Well, I was a quarterback, right? So I just, okay. And then next thing you know, somehow magically I was the deep snapper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we didn't, I can't remember if Coach Cleveland had been doing the coaching for, or it was either Coach Cleveland or Coach Hicks. It must have been teaching people how to do that because we didn't have anybody.
Right. Right.
So I remember Coach Sellers kind of going, I think you have to put two hands on the ball. That's all the coaching I got, right?
Just throwing.
Yeah. Well, so this hand thing. So I'm out there all the time on defense. If it's wet, I'm soaking wet.
Yeah.
And my hands, I'm banging, and they're all 25 pounds heavier than me. And I'm supposed to go out there and then snap the ball. Yeah. I remember watching a couple of films kind of going, here's where it is. Here's where he had to feel the grounder. It didn't get there. I'm just like.
We didn't have that many bad snaps or mishaps. I do want to welcome Pat Fitch and number 13, Mike Henry, have just joined. The two of your classmates and some major contributors on that team, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I was the deep snapper. And no one remembers. It was like, how did that happen? We don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't have. I was thinking maybe Charles Bunton.
I had no idea who did it before.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? I only snapped for you on the punts, you and Clark, when Clark was the punter. I was when I would set up my legs, you couldn't have me snap for field goals because people could step over top of me. Too low.
Well, Rick, let's go off the field, your sophomores and junior year. Let's talk a little bit about the academic side of things.
Yeah.
I know you've always had big aspirations academically. Did you find high school challenging at all? Did you make it challenging in some way? Did you take classes at Wallace, or did you supplement your education at all?
No.
Okay.
No, to be fair, it's just a bit of a blessing, right? It is the ability to kind of remember things. So I'm that guy. If it's a movie and I've seen it, I remember all of it, right? And so
blessing and a curse.
What's that?
I said it's a blessing and a curse.
It can be, because that brain power could have been used to solve cancer or something like that, and I know that would be helpful for a lot of people, but it's not what happened. It's like I can do useless movie trivia and stuff like that. So I do remember some other things. And so it was, for me in school, I got everything I needed by watching what was going on at the time. So, my mom would tell you is I never had homework because I did it while I was sitting in class. And so, no, I didn't go to Wallace or any of those things. What I will say is that I have to give the school system a lot of credit, and Miss Jernigan, right, is that when I got past calculus, I was still a junior, and the city wasn't going to allow her to teach a second class, and she was actually the only one qualified in the math department to teach a second year of calculus. And so she volunteered and taught me, Felicia Whaley, and Lisa Troutman, who was actually a junior. She taught us calculus 2 during her break.
Wow.
And so, so we benefited by not running out of classes, although senior like everybody else, I had like library aid, and I can't remember what else I had. So, I had some of those classes. So.
Well, I was going to say, what did you do to, if you were, I'm not going to say bored, we'll just say academically advanced. What did you do, Rick, when you had downtime, when most kids are studying or should be studying? Did you have other hobbies? Did you get in trouble? Did you find other fun things to do?
You didn't hear about me getting in trouble, did you?
Limitations is up on most things.
I used to read a lot, and two different areas of reading. Obviously, there was a fiction part, but a lot of historical type things, a lot of stuff related to World War II, World War I, the Korean War, things like that. Vietnam War, those kind of things. And so I read quite a few books and things like that. So, with the advent of 24-hour TV, this is the other piece is that I'm also blessed with a type of metabolism. I average about 5 hours a night sleep. That's it.
Wow.
20 years ago, I averaged 4.
Wow.
And so 24-hour TV, you can only watch Spaceballs or whatever, however many times, right? So you turn on the Learning Channel, Discovery Channel, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I have a decent depth on quite a few things. I'm not an expert in a ton of things, but back those days I would read a lot, and I read very fast too. So it kind of helped. I mean, but no, I didn't get in a whole lot of trouble in school. And what's funny is I didn't take the opportunity to do the stuff that I found more important as I got older. Mm-hmm. Like carpentry and certain things like that, and working on cars and stuff. I didn't do that in high school. I did that after I was an adult. So
sure. And I just want to share with you, when the pandemic is over, we've just this day have discovered we now have an opening for our Thursday night trivia in our neighborhood. To free up an hour or two on Thursday nights. It doesn't pay much, but it's all the fried food you can handle, good stuff. Anyway, well, Rick, let's take it to your junior year, my senior year. Let's go back to that season. There's so many memories. I've talked to so many guys about their experiences from that year. And I want to ask you just a couple that may have stuck out for you, whether it's on the field or off the field, things that really are memories that still are with you.
Yeah. So, of course, everybody's talked about it. So, here we sit, we have 3 games in 10 days, and it's tough. And then that 4th game, and, Lawrence was hurt and had all those things. And then Central Thomasville was coming in, and they were like number 9 in Georgia. And here we sit at 1-3, I think is where we were at that time. And we whooped them pretty good.
Yeah, we shut them out. That was our homecoming. Yeah,
so I do remember the concern that is what we booked for homecoming, the number 9 team in Georgia. It's like everybody was kind of going, we all love Coach Parrish, but come on, man.
I'm just glad he didn't schedule Central of Macon with that big of a school.
So I remember that. Dothan High, everybody remembers that one. That one was tough. It was just a slog, right? And just difficult. I remember a few other things, but we went to Opelika, right? Mm-hmm. And they had Sean Smith, right? Who I think he was the 100-meter guy, right, for the state.
He was a parade All-America.
And I remember us scouting them, and they're 10-0, and I think they were number 1 in the state. And
they were.
Yeah, I mean, and so you're sitting there, and I remember scouting, and then there was a play that was like, well, when this happens, it's going to be a swing pass. It's going to go this way, and they're going to come back to the strong side, and Sean Smith. I remember seeing it, and I'm like, I'm going to go. And like, it was a little wet. It wasn't raining, but it had been wet, right? And I pushed off, and that foot slipped, and then the ball got to Sean. So here's me in 100-meter, however fast he ran. Like, please, just make the right angle, make the right angle. And I just got to driving out of bounds. I was still there, because everybody else had gone the other way. Right? So I was able to get that one. But the other play is they had Taylor, right, that went to Auburn.
Greg Taylor.
Quarterback, but he'd been hurt or something. But he came in later. He was a problem. He was difficult for us. And I remember coming around the back side, and he's now taken off. We've kind of broken through on the one side. and there is nobody except Joey Sheffield. And I swear Joey Sheffield like grabbed a shoestring and tackled him. And I remember looking at him going, man, we're in big trouble. I could just, my mind went, he's going to run a long ways because there was nothing but green in front of him. No. And I swear Joey Sheffield saved that game with that tackle because it was a huge tackle.
Absolutely did, because we scored pretty late to win the game. Yeah. And Coach Parrish famously tells the story that when all the coaches went to Montgomery for the pre-playoffs pairings, they announced number one Opelika, and their coach stands up, and I forget who it was at the time, and then against 6 and 4 unranked, and we were the last ranked team in the standings of the pairings.
Yeah,
they're snickering, they're under their breath commenting, and Coach Parrish, he got the last word, of course.
Well, so the best part was the end, and I'm not going to say who the cheerleader was. It's not who you guys would think, because Carl and I were really good friends, but it wasn't her. I will say it wasn't her, and it wasn't. I'm just going to tell you, one of them goes because they had fireworks after the game, because they were absolutely certain they were going to win. So what did they get? They just started firing the fireworks, and one of our cheerleaders goes, "Look what they did for us, fireworks!" And I kind of went, "I don't think those were for us."
Well, I tell you, if you remember us getting out of town, our bus was shaking and there were rocks.
And didn't Kenneth Franks get hurt?
He was stabbed either in the stands or on the way to the parking lot. And that was a rough night.
It was a rough night. And so, so, that was a good one. Then we played Phoenix City, right? It was after that. And
that was the next game.
Joseph missed the game, right? So, it's funny. I didn't realize that, because I knew this call was coming, thinking about it a bit, is that they ran a lot of option. Okay. And the way we scouted that, we tended to play the option linebacker over. Okay. So tackle goes down, and then I killed a quarterback, right? And that actually happened quite a few times. He tended to let the ball go, but my job just to hit him, right? So it got kind of obnoxious after a point. He rolled over on me, tried to knee me a couple of times because he was getting tired of it. That had some application later on. We got to the state game, because if you've been watching the film, you know how we played the option, because they did something a little different. But when we get to that, so that was Phoenix City. Foley game was kind of a blur, and that was also like wet and messy.
And it was the second year in a row that we came from behind at the end of the game and beat them on a last-minute touchdown.
Tim Reynolds picked off that pass at the end, right? Yeah. So, that was one that I remember, because we did something weird. We only rushed 3, and so both Chris and I dropped into coverage. And so what happened is that, I think Tim was a corner. He had rolled to the inside, and so I'm standing out there in the flat, and he picked off. I was just watching him. It was kind of just like the Joey Sheffield thing. Hey man, that's a great play. I'm like, right here, if I had a camera, I'd take a picture.
And guys, there's another one of those plays where Rick was this close that we're about to get to as well.
Yeah, that one. But then the league game, as we talked about, the one that I remember, because we're out there, we're hitting. They finally threw a pass, right? And I remember looking over. Oh my gosh, they're going to complete it. They completed the pass, and Derek Flowers blew that kid up. I mean, from where I could see, because I was on the right side and it was going down the visitor's sideline. So, you're getting there trying to get the quarterback. You turn around, he's throwing the ball. You can see it, like, oh man. And then that kid, I don't know what happened, but he blew him, like, he looked like he flew 5 yards off the field, but the ball stayed in the field. And I think Mike got the ball.
Mike, it sure was. And guys, we had just gone up 28-27 with about a minute 5 to 10 to go in the game. And they throw a double pass, a trick play, and it probably goes for about 25-30 yards. And it's pretty deep into our territory, but Derek and Mike just saved the game right there.
Get up. So I remember that one. And then of course the state game, right? Which was there's a couple of plays in there. It was
let me set that stage real quick. They get the ball, they drive down, it doesn't take them long, they score 7-0. We don't do anything on offense. They get the ball back. They're driving again. They're inside our 15-yard line. and Bobby and you and Aristotle are on the same side of the line, same side of the field, and Bobby blows up the play, some type of an option, and the ball's on the carpet. And I just watched that play about 25 times, and I see you doing what?
It bounced off my face mask. So
thank goodness it did.
So yeah, so the interesting thing about that, right, was of course we had scouted, the trap play, right? That Cece's, what's his name, Chris, her cousin.
Yep.
That but they'd done a wrinkle with that, which they didn't work in the same formation when they ran it, but we knew that they would run it. Now, there was no way to run it on the strong side, and because they did it on both sides, they ran it to the weak side, but they had a tight end over there. And Chris was not used to. We scouted that without a tight end, and so he came across, and there was a seam, right, and that's what happened there. But it's like I said, is we played a couple teams that were running options, and we would have a tendency to crash, go in. So we made an adjustment. If you've watched some of the play before, their quarterback, he wasn't coming down to read the end. He was following the fullback right into the hole. So I'm over there. Philip Doyle, right, was the tight end on the strong side. But even on the back side, he wouldn't go and run down. He just was following right in the hole. He'd 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, whatever. So we made an adjustment. So if you look at the play, instead of everybody coming across and breaking down, we all went the opposite way. And so, I got Philip Doyle on my side here, and I remember seeing, I can't remember what the quarterback's name was. I remember seeing it. It was like, you could see it in his face, like, this isn't right, And then, Bobby pushed the tackle, because instead of going down, I think what we had instead of linebacker over, they filled first. And so we all went out, and that ball bounced like right in front of me. Thank goodness I didn't get it. But I pushed it pushed forward, and then Aristotle picks it up and runs with it. So that was close. Now, most people don't know is that they fumbled the ball in the next play, and I recovered that fumble. And then it was after that, their offense
was over. I mean, then we ended up scoring 3 straight times, and we were up by
Mike got a pick. Did Mike get 2 picks?
I know he had one. I don't remember if he had a second one.
But I mean, you remember, I think they had 3 series in a row where they didn't get 1 or 2 plays off, and they turned the ball over every time. So they fell apart, and then you and David just, and you had Lawrence had the pass to Chris, right?
Well, I know that I threw 3 touchdowns to David, and Isaac scored.
Isaac scored 1, but Lawrence had a really long pass. It wasn't a touchdown.
He did. But I've long held that play by you guys, you, Aristotle, and Bobby. I think that is the most definitive play in the program's history, because it completely changed.
It broke
the tone of that game. Now, us on offense, we're not watching. We were in a huddle. We were not paying attention. But then all of a sudden, we see Aristotle taken off the other way, followed by Derek Flowers. But to me, that's the definitive play in the program.
I mean, it couldn't have been. It was like a switch, right? The other thing is again, is we have to give a lot of credit to the coaches. It's like, hey, listen, we got to do this differently. This because the quarterback was the one that was tearing us up, running the ball, and so. After that, they fumbled right away. And then once they got behind, it just, the whole tenor of the game was just different. And I remember, because I remember walking by, Larry Roberts was at the game. And he was telling Coach, Coach Parrish, he goes, oh, you got it. He goes, hey, don't ruin it. We haven't won the game yet. So,
you say that because I actually heard part of that conversation standing there, Coach.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the relationship and how fun or not fun it was playing for Coach Ragsdale, Griffin, Johnson, Hicks. I think Coach Hicks had gone to administration by then. But that group of coaches just, they were on your side of the field, not my side. But I just know how animated and how spirited Coach Ragsdale was in his first year with our program.
Yeah, so I got his number so I could check because he's not on social media, right? Check on him. He was a great guy. We forget how young he was.
Mhm.
I mean, he was exceptionally young man when he took over. And Coach Griffin had probably 15 years more experience than him coaching in the DBs. Bo. I hate calling him Bo. That's what we did in baseball, right? Coach Johnson, he'd been there for a long time too. But it was good energy, right? And Coach Ragsdale just a good. They were all good men, right? Just a good guy, right? He'd never played defense. I think he was an offensive lineman, right?
That's right. That's
But
right.
he learned to be a DC, and so he picked that up from his coaching assistant stuff and everything else. But he was a good guy. He none of the coaches were swearing types or anything like that. That wasn't allowed. That didn't go on, and so
Sam Hill. That
what's
was
that?
Sam. It wasn't the Sam Hill.
The same thing. Oh, yeah. But no, they again all with a slightly different style. Coach Johnson was low key. We had him in baseball.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to give the Newt Rockne speech. That wasn't him, right?
No.
He was solid, stable, and everything else. But Coach Ragsdale, not a rah guy, but a lot of enthusiasm, right? And
Which seemed to be really infectious.
Yeah.
It just really seemed to resonate with you guys because your defense was so solid the whole year. We didn't get blown out in a single game. The most you gave up, I think, was the Lee the 28-27 game. But everything else was so low. It just seemed that he connected with you guys so quickly.
Well, so you also got to think about the team, right? Mm-hmm. So you had Kazzy and you had Willie, right? And they were full on D1 guys, right? And even the folks that we had on the defensive line, right? We didn't have anybody that would have necessarily been qualified as a D1 lineman, but they were all solid. The other thing is you talk about the cerebral part, right? Listen, I remember seeing Lee went out of their way in that second game to produce a program that had all of our weights on there, and all of theirs on there.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of like, well, the lambs to the slaughter here. This is what's going to happen. And but again, is scheme is part, attitude is part, and then the other thing that we did on defense, Chris and I we didn't rotate with anybody, or, not very much. I didn't rotate with anybody, but is that the defensive linemen rotated. Okay, even Lonnie would get a break every once in a while. So you'd have Manny, you'd have Lonnie, and you'd have Ross, and then you'd have Joey Sheffield, and you'd have Bobby Estes. I'm trying to think who else we had. I had Manny. Manny so Manny played. I always thought about who was next to me, right? So Bobby would spot Ross from time to time. I'm trying to think of who it was that was in the middle, because Manny and Joey played on the opposite side. That's how you remember the Opelika. The reason why I could see Joey is because he was the tackle on the other side, right? But I can't remember who it was that would play nose. We had somebody else that would play nose. I can't remember who that was right now off the top of my head, but they would rotate them. So even though that, we might be giving up 15, 20 pounds a man, it allowed people to give full effort, right? And then you'd swap in the next time.
Sure it did. Sure it did. Rick, one of the things that I always enjoy hearing from everybody I've had these conversations is not only their journey and their experiences, but it's now been 30 plus years since we played. We're all getting old and crotchety, et cetera. Trying not to be. But one of the things that I always enjoy hearing, and I suspect because your boys are athletes as well, is there's lots of life lessons that I know that have resonated with you through the years. And what are some of those things that either you took into your professional life or that you shared with your sons or anything else? Because I know you're still active playing baseball at time. What are some of those things that really have stuck with you that, let's say that we've got some teenage kids watching now, and I don't know why they would, but let's just say they would be, maybe something they can take away from this.
So, trying to, in business, we try to use sports. Sometimes we use war metaphors and things like that. One of the things that you kind of take away is there's a bit of simplicity on the sports side. Cause I've also been a baseball coach for 30 years. Right. And, including Legion and some of those other things for a while. And so, one of the things that, relative to the business world as an example, is that coaches coach and players play. Okay. Coaches can't play. All right. And so it's one of those things that is helpful for you to take when you get in the business world. Okay. Where I'm at today is I have a lot of people who are in leadership roles. Right. And the great failure in the business world is that delineation isn't there, because coaches can play, but they shouldn't. And so it's kind of taking away. It's like, why does that work in sports and you don't apply that in business? And so, when I deal with someone who's either got their first supervisory thing, or worse, they're managing a business. I have 3 people that own profit and loss. Right. Some of them, it's their first time, and trying to explain to them, it's like, I know you can do everything because that's how you got here. We all advance earlier in our careers in the corporate world based upon what we can do. But you get to a point where it isn't about what you can do. It's about what you can get others to do. Well, in sports, you learn that already. Right. And I think that's the big thing is that the lesson to take is, it doesn't matter how great a coach you are, players got to play. And so, I think that's, it's understanding how that delineation works in the sporting world and how it can be successful, is recognizing that you kind of have to bring that with you because you don't have the boundary. It's not a natural boundary there. So that help you? Is that what you were looking for?
It absolutely does. What I was going to say is a coach has to trust his players' ability and knowledge to be able to execute the way he's been taught or coached.
Right.
And the same way, if you're a manager in business, you've hired somebody to do their job. Well, let them do their job unless they show that they can't. And then you need to coach them up some more or replace them. But
it's one of the leadership factors.
I think that's just so critically important to today's time. But I don't want to get out of here, and we're getting close to the end. I want to talk about one of the most beloved couple of teachers at our school.
Yeah.
And the story that I know you're going to share, and that's Lamar Helms and Norma Jean Spivey. Both taught at Northview for many, many, many years, and were huge supporters of the sports teams, most notably the football program. So I'm going to let you take it over from there.
Yeah. So everybody in my class knows, because we all had to take history together, right? Is that I would sit up there next to her at the front of the class, and she, Altoids and mints and stuff, she'd always have those, and I always had a scratchy throat. And so she was pretty clever, but she loved the school, loved it, loved the kids, loved, and so did, and I never had Mr. Helms in the class, but they loved being part of it. They loved that whole piece and everything. And so the story is that there was a banquet, and so I invited her to go to the banquet. She'd never been to that. I didn't realize that wasn't. I mean, you can bring whoever you want as long as you pay, right? Yeah. And so bring some food. And so I was able to bring, to invite her and bring Norma Jean to the football banquet. And then I think afterwards that became a thing. People started doing that, which was good because, Mr. Helms for sure, but they weren't the only ones. I mean, we had, of course, some of them were affiliated with the band, but that doesn't matter. Different, folks who had kids that were either in the band or played, or they just had kids and were still involved. And so, we had, in terms of a school spirit, right, from a lot of these teachers, a significant investment in the kids, not just in terms of the school part. And so it was good. I mean, listen, I'd be surprised if you could find one person that would have a hateful word about Norma Jean Spivey. So she was a great woman, and it's unfortunate, that she's no longer with us, right?
Yeah.
So, but we're getting old, man. It's just the way it is, huh?
It is, but no, that was so special, and I know that they loved going to anything related with the football program. And it was just, it's because they took a real investment, not only as us as in, from an academic standpoint, but just overall. They were sports nuts, and it was a bonus that they were our teachers and that they really liked the most of the kids that they taught. Anyway, Rick, I want to thank you, bud, for this trip down some memory lane and a whole bunch of names you pulled out there and some awesome memories. So thank you for sharing with us this evening.
Yep. So, the one thing, just so we close out, because you had an idea that was related to this Cougars group, which is this thing on LinkedIn, right? So, for anybody who would go in there and look, is that of course, I will say, if Patrick's still on, thank you for volunteering me, but that's okay. But you had a concept. Hey, should we try to organize the group in a way where whether it's professional stuff or whatever. So we did create a group on LinkedIn. And if folks are interested, they can look for it. It's NHS Cougars Athletic, whatever, but they can also find me. I'm a bit more distinguished because I have the glasses on, and
There you
I think
go.
I think there's a pipe. I think there might be a pipe involved, but is that you guys can look me up. I'm not too hard to find. Cazenave is still not a very common name, but is that if they're interested, they can go there. I'm not screening everybody. Like, did you really play? I don't know,
Right. And Rick, I'll put the link again. I put it a couple of times, but guys, this would be a great way to network. If you're looking for business opportunities, internships, mentorships, there's potential there that the more people we can get involved in that group. Gosh, we have over 300 people in this Northview football group, and some wonderful people in there, Rick included. So we need to take advantage of all of this.
Yeah.
So thank you for mentioning that, Rick. I appreciate you bringing that up and being volunteered by Patrick. You guys can take that up another time. But thank you, guys. As always, appreciate everybody the comments and just the enthusiasm and y'all being part of this. We're going to keep doing it. We've got interviews, or I don't like calling them interviews, conversations lined up all the way through the end of the year. We're going to keep doing this as long as you guys keep showing up. So I hope you guys have a safe week, safe weekend, and we'll catch you next Wednesday. Take care.